for like the first 4 meals?
Yes, the same protocol, a number of meals,
Okay.
and then basically I'd go again to 4. And I usually around 4 was when you'd start to see a little bit of mild. You can just feel that edge where you're on the edge of what your limit is.
Depending on your carbs, right?
Yeah, depending on, like, this is all set, so your diet stays the same.
Right.
So your diet is preset, and then when you start to feel like you're just on the edge of hypos, you just dial it back 1 IU, and that's what you run with.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, it's a bit heat-promising, but it works.
I can get with that, man. You could test your blood sugar too, between meals and see where you're getting. I know a lot of people are enjoying like getting to that level of scientific exploration to actually see, how much is your blood sugar clearing. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast with Dave Crosland. I'm Scott McNally, and all of our programming is brought to you by evalbloodanalysis.com. If you're in the UK, you can get your lab work done by Dave. In fact, if you call Eval, Dave might even pick up the phone. We have a comment about that later in the show that we'll discuss. We're also brought to you by Strom Sports Nutrition. You can go to stromsports.net. Check them out in the UK for great health stacks, including now in the US. They've got a U.S. branch, so definitely check out Strom, especially if you're on cycle. TrueNutrition.com. I did some wheeling and dealing with True Nutrition, and our code THINK now gets 10% off all orders. So definitely keep checking out True Nutrition. Get your protein from them. Get your creatine from them and all your other basic bodybuilding supplements. Of course, supplementsource.ca for our Canadians. They have great deals that change week to week, including like blowouts on label change products, stuff like that. Dave, we got a lot of feedback on the last show. Dude, we had people who were telling us, so we did the show like, what gear can I get from my doctor? How can I get jacked on my TRT script? Man, some of these guys are getting legit cycles. Like we had a guy who was like, I get 300 tests, 300 Deca, 50 Anavar. I saw a list that had like 100 milligram Anadrol tabs. It's like, dude, this stuff is crazy, man. I'm like, are you sure this isn't a source list? No, this is a TRT list. They call it add-ons. Add-ons to your TRT. Yeah. What do you think of that? It's a different world, man. It's a different world.
Yeah, it's a bit mad. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're cycling, you can get legit prescribed pharma. Why wouldn't you? Of course you would. It makes perfect sense. I'm amazed they can get away with it.
Here's the deal, though, man. You're paying for that prescription because did you see some of those prices? Like we're talking 5 times what you would pay from a source.
Yeah, there is that. You do pay for the nose. Now, question, because I don't really understand this. So, question.
Yeah.
If I was in America and I had a TRT doctor that was giving me a script and he was allowing me to prescribe Deca and say oxys for argument's sake, would that be something I would be getting paid for by my insurance?
No.
Or would that be something that'd be out of pocket to me?
I think it depends on the insurance in some cases, but generally, no. Generally, what you'll have is like a cash-only initial sign-up fee, and that will come with blood work done X amount of times per year, or maybe it's not as expensive, but you have to pay it more often each time you visit the doctor, that kind of thing. A lot of times it's done telemedicine, so you're not actually visiting in person. You're getting labs drawn remotely and then having a meeting of some type. It might not even be a meeting with the actual doctor. You might be with a physician's assistant. You might be with a representative who's the go-between for you and the doctor. But yeah, no, it's usually out of pocket, but insurance will cover, like insurance covers my TRT. I get it legit through my doctor. I get prescribed 200 milligrams per week, which I don't necessarily need to use 200 at all times, but it's at 200 a week. And I want to say I pay something like maybe, $15 for a 3-month supply of test at that rate, something like that.
Yeah, so that I could see making sense, but if you're paying, hundreds of dollars over the odds to buy pharma, I'd be, well, to be honest, I'd just go get UGL, but then I'm tight, so.
There is something to be said, too, for the quality of those products. And I know there are a lot of people who are like, yeah, well, I want that because I want Real Pharma. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I've run Real Pharma Anavar. And I a couple times I had capsules. I had 50 milligram troches that you just like they're like a sublingual little puck kind of thing, a little cube. I didn't notice any difference than just good quality UGL Anavar. So, I think as long as you're getting, where to get the stuff, that's really the key. If you're going UGL. Anyway. Yeah.
A slight update as well. There is a small amount of Mast and Primo kicking about from China now.
Okay. Yeah, you're seeing a little bit more. I got to have you speak up a little bit. I think Mike's real quiet today.
Really, really small amounts.
Okay, like 1 milligram for each of you.
What was 68 grams was the offer.
Okay.
That's what they had, 68 grams of raw.
Not 70, not 60, no. 68.
Yeah, so obviously it's still incredibly thin on the ground, but it does look like there's a little bit of movement.
And we did see somebody with a Primo script, too, in the comments. You guys are freaking awesome, by the way. Thank you for commenting. We're going to take all your listener questions today. We're going to try to power through them because we have a lot. We did get one question that I thought would be an interesting lead topic. One of the topics that came up on the last episode was, over-the-counter products as well, like insulin. And we can get, Novolin R, Humulin R, and then somebody mentioned you can, in the comments, you can also get the Novolin 70/30. So it's, a slightly slower blend. If somebody were to start insulin for the first time, how would we propose that it were used in your bodybuilding in a growth phase?
So for me, I like to stick with rapid. I'm not a big fan of putting a baseline in. I know it's got more popular over the years, but I like my insulin to spike with my food. So I want it to be responsive to the intake I'm doing. Whereas if I've got a baseline, I've got this background driver all the time. And if for any reason I miss a meal, I'm late with a meal, there's added pressure on there for blood glucose levels getting low. So I like it to be timed around my meals only, and that's why I like the rapid.
Yeah.
Normally, if I was looking at an insulin protocol to aid an off-season, I'd probably look at 2, 3, 4, depending on food volume and individual IU with each meal, and that would be about it. But you can do the very high dose stuff. You're going to get incredibly full off that. I'm not saying it's going to add anything from a growth factor point of view, but cosmetically, you're going to get very full. And depending on where your baseline is, you could probably comfortably put 10% body weight on.
Okay.
With a high dose growth and insulin protocol. And that would be super compensation of water and glycogen getting drawn into the muscle. So you're literally going to be as full as you ever could possibly be.
Right.
Rich exploited it a lot. He was quite open about using insulin growth protocols before expos, and that he would come in at an expo 20, 35, 40 pound.
I've heard.
Than he really.
So I know people that were close to him, and I've heard the protocols he used, which, Dave, they were nothing short of the highest protocols I have ever heard in my life. Like, ridiculous, man. People who were with him firsthand going to the grocery store to get the carbs he was going to use this insulin the day before the expo.
Yeah, I mean, he was definitely touching, possibly 3 figures of insulin in a day. For some of his protocols.
Not quite.
It was up there, though, because it was very Milos-esque.
Yeah.
And there's no doubt those sort of protocols will make you massively full and make you appear a lot bigger than you actually really are.
Yeah.
If you earn your living by the way you look, it's a useful tool to have in your arsenal, but it's not really adding anything to a long-term sustained muscle growth. Whereas I find with growth and insulin, small, frequent, properly timed is the key. And the big stuff, I mean, I know when I tried the Milos stuff, where it was massive doses of insulin pre-workout, massive intra-nutrition through the workout, massive dose of insulin post-workout. I think the highest I did in a day was about 120 IU.
Wow. Okay, so hold on. So when you say massive doses pre-workout, do you remember what the number would have been for like just that shot?
I think it was about 40 or 50.
Okay, so keep in mind, guys, the standard rule that we start by with pairing your carbs to your insulin is 10 grams of carbohydrate per 1 unit of insulin. So if you're doing 10 units, you need 100 grams of carbs. If you're doing 50 units, you need to eat 500 grams of carbs before you get in the gym. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't quite track with the higher stuff, but the other thing is you've got to remember, for me at that point, I mean, I was taking in huge amounts of carbs all day long anyway.
Okay.
So there was no shortage of glycogen flowing around in my system at that point. But it was a very heavy intra-nutrition. I mean, I think direct glucose within the pre and the intra was probably about 100 grams. It wasn't super massive.
Okay.
But there was citrulline and a whole host of other bits and bats thrown in there. To the point where it actually made me sick. You know, I didn't want to train because I just felt like, ugh.
Yeah.
And then post-workout was 50, 60, 70 IU.
Cool.
And I mean, like I said, massively full, loads and loads of water and glycogen driven into the muscle. But also the downside of it was massively resistant at the end of it all.
Insulin resistant.
Insulin sensitivity was trashed.
So I noticed that too when I had used it and we're talking about, this is the old school way. I never went that high, but I started with 10 units with meal 1 and then just ran that with Humulin R, right? So you're getting a coverage of several meals. And then again, with my pre-workout meal, I would do 8 units. And over the course of time, I recognized that I could build that up higher and higher to the point where I was at like 20 units and 20 units. And that wasn't because I was increasing the carbs so much. It's because I was becoming resistant to the insulin that I had been using. With that, you're going to gain more body fat, and it's going to be counterproductive versus the way you mentioned it, you know, using it low dose, say when you're spiking carbs, pre-workout. I think that's the wiser method and much more common today, you know?
Yeah, and I think much more sustainable. And probably, if anything, actually takes the pressure off the beta cells a little bit and gives your system actually more support. Whereas the other protocol of, I mean, we have this core running through our industry of if 1 is good, 5 has to be fucking awesome, and it's just built into us. You know what I mean? Nothing exceeds like assess. More is always better. Insulin is definitely one of those products where it doesn't stand true long term, but it was that super glycogen compensation that gave way to insulin have this reputation of being able to put 30, 40 pound of muscle on somebody.
Yeah.
And it wasn't muscle, it was water and glycogen, but the muscle swelled so much. For the most part, you didn't see a huge drop in condition.
Yeah.
Particularly, you just saw people super, super full. So it's not surprising that people misunderstood that as muscular growth and as actual size until they stopped taking the insulin and spent a week pissing their asses out and realizing that was all water.
Yeah. You know, I will say this, that back in the day when we did the type of protocol I was discussing with, you know, the 10 in the morning, 8, you know, pre-workout later in the day, it would be like 8 hours later for that second dose. We did that every day. And so it was irregardless or regardless of, which are both real words, by the way. If I say irregardless, sometimes people will comment and be like, that's not a word. It's kind of redundant, but it is a word. That was done every day, and it would be done for like 3 weeks only, and then you would discontinue it. That was the common thing versus now, if you're using it as a pre-workout, like you mentioned, Dave, and let's say it's 4 units with your pre-workout meal, then you might be able to do that, and you're doing it 3 days a week. You could do that longer term, you know?
Yeah, I think the low dosing particularly, it's not going to be, you know, a night and day scenario. You're not going to see dramatic changes, but when you look back over a period of time, you will see an improvement in progress.
Agreed.
It might equate to 2 or 3 pound of extra muscle over the length of a full cycle, but that's still 2 or 3 pound you wouldn't have had.
Yeah, and the incredible pumps that go along with that. You know, there's like some definite day-to-day or instant gratification, I think, that comes with insulin use, you know?
Definitely is.
So, and I mentioned that number, 4 IU. I think that's a pretty decent place to start, 3-4 IU. And depending on timing, I mean, so let's talk timing of when we say fast acting. I mean, we have Humulin R, which is super common, over the counter. We have Humalog, and then we have other real fast stuff like Fiasp. I have another one that's, I can't remember the name of it offhand, in the fridge, that's like radically fast.
I'm a bit old school, so I used to use Nova Rapid.
Okay, so Nova Rapid, is that like, what's Nova Rapid?
It peaks at about, I think it's 90 minutes.
Okay, so like a Humalog type product.
Yeah, so I would generally take that sort of just before a meal, or even with a meal, or you know, at the most 30 minutes prior to a meal, depending on what the meal was. Obviously, by the end of the day, you're getting an accumulation effect because you're starting to get it to layer a little bit. Because
you're doing that with each meal.
Yes.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, you're what you tend to do is, what I used to tend to do was actually at the back end of the day taper the doses off a little bit.
Okay.
Because I was getting a layering, so I was always going into the later meals with insulin still active in the system.
Yeah, which is something you got to look out for. Let's talk though, like for the new guy who's just doing this for the first time. My vote would be just pre-workout. And maybe even 3 times a week, you know, on training bigger body parts. I wouldn't go with every day, and I wouldn't go with frequent or multiple shots per day. I'd just start with one, with either a Humalog, or if you're using Humulin R and you're to take, we're all talking sub-Q with these shots, but if you were to take that IM, it will work faster, much more like Humalog. So you could do an IM shot of Humalog, or excuse me, Humulin R, or sub-Q Humalog. My take, Dave, I would do it something like that. It will start working within 15 minutes, right? So I'd eat my meal 1 hour before training, make sure I have enough carbs to cover, so 40 grams of carbs at least to cover 4 units of insulin. I'd take it 15 minutes before training, and then when I start training, I would also have an intra-workout shake with a complex carb like highly branched cyclic dextrin from True Nutrition, or Carbolin, waxy maize, and I would couple that with an EAA too.
Yeah, see, I've tended to use it around meal support rather than workouts, particularly to try and help push the food to higher levels.
Yeah, okay.
But I tend to do a little bit more of a Heath Robinson approach. So I'd start with 2.
Okay.
And then I wouldn't alter my diet, because to me the insulin needs to be matched to the food, not the food to the insulin. Now, I'm not saying you're changing the whole diet, you're just moving around because you're doing a single shot that day.
Right.
But so it would be 2 IU with the first, say you had a 5-meal, 6-meal protocol.
Yep.
2 IU with the first 3 or 4 meals of the day.
Okay.
And then I'd up it to 3. And I'd just keep an eye on when I felt that hypo came in, and then I'd just pull it back. But the only way
But just to be clear, you said for the first 3 or 4 meals a day. When you say then you would up it to 3, you don't mean for the rest of the meals.
No, I mean, so I'd start with 2 IU per meal.
Yep.
Then I'd up it to 3 IU per meal.
Okay. For like the first 4 meals?
Yes, the same protocol and number of meals.
Okay.
And then basically I'd go again to 4. And I usually around 4 was when you'd start to see a little bit of mild, you can just feel that edge where you're on the edge of what your limit is.
Depending on your carbs, right?
Yeah, depending on, like, this is all set. So your diet stays the same.
Right.
So your diet is preset. And then when you start to feel like you're just on the edge of hypos, you just dial it back 1 IU, and that's what you run with.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, it's a bit Heath Robinson, but it works.
I can get with that, man. You could test your blood sugar too, between meals and see where you're getting. I know a lot of people are enjoying like getting to that level of scientific exploration to actually see, how much is your blood sugar clearing. I like it, Dave. I think that's good. Any warnings that I can think of, a couple warnings that we should give them. Like you said, you may start. So with these doses are very low. And we're not talking about something that could cause major issues, like those crazier, higher old school doses may have. But still, you always want to be careful. And so I would suggest not taking naps after you've taken your insulin. Wait for the insulin to clear. And I would also suggest having simple carbs on hand if needed. And if you do start to go hypo, you probably don't need a lot, but just remember it's going to take 10 minutes. So as you start to eat, you won't feel better for 10 minutes. So just understand it won't take much. 10, 20 grams of carbs will probably sort you out. But most people will end up clearing out their refrigerator and their pantry. And then 10 minutes later, their blood sugar starts stabilizing. And they say, oh my God, I had to eat 400 carbs to fix it. No,
you just didn't wait long enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that. And I think it's important that you're super consistent with it. That's another thing. You're highly unlikely to have any sort of major problems from the insulin itself.
Yeah.
But it can happen.
I've heard one of the stories.
Yes. I would advise not going hypo and passing out at 90 mile an hour down the motorway. That doesn't end well.
Yeah. Was that car completely totaled?
Off. There wasn't a straight panel on it. It ripped 2 wheels off.
Oh, you're kidding me, man.
No.
Thankfully, and no one else, you didn't get hurt, no one else got hurt.
No, I had some glass in my head, but that was picking out for a few days. But other than that, I was fine. It was, retrospectively, it was funny, but it was also very dangerous. I could have very easily killed myself, and even worse, I could have very easily have killed somebody else. So, yeah, that was definitely a learning experience.
All right, we got a bunch of questions, guys. If you want to take part in the next show, comment below with questions. If you had follow-up questions about this topic, by the way, I would much rather you asked questions, even if you felt like they were dumb questions, and be educated on what you're doing. We want to be really careful with this. And also, we should be really clear. I'm going to use this ink pen as a demo, one last thing. So when we say 2IU, if this were your insulin pen, 2IU is like to right, and that's the for a start. It's right there. We don't want to show an actual pin, Dave. We don't want to show that on the screen. I can do that too, but we'll say like it's that much. It's like 2 little tiny ticks. That's 2IU versus, it's not to the 2, which might be 20IU down here. Sorry, I had to catch you because I knew what you were reaching for, and I was like, we shouldn't show that on the screen.
I don't know what you're on about. I don't have such items.
Yeah, me either. Not right there.
No, I'm a lifetime natural.
Hey, what's up, guys? I wanted to take a break from the podcast and do something that would be a little bit different to keep you entertained while I do my True Nutrition ad. So I brought Maddie with me. I want to let you know. Oh, she doesn't like the mic. I want to let you know that the code THINK now offers 10% off at True Nutrition. That's the main thing I want to tell you. I talked to the people over there. We got that set up, and now I get commission on orders. So I get 5% off, or you guys get 10% off. I collect 5% commission. There's people coming. Don't you bark. There's a dog walking by. It's okay. You're all right. Anyway, I'm going to put a link in the description. And I think that if you use that link, it'll put the code in automatically. But it's code THINK. It helps to support the show. You guys get awesome supplements in the process. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to place an order myself this weekend for the cookie butter flavored whey isolate cold filtered. Maddie, she's got nothing to say on that one. Anyway, that's it, guys. We appreciate you guys watching the shows. Appreciate you supporting the programs. Let's get back to it.
All right, guys, questions for the show. Like I said, comment below. We'll try to get them on. And guys, we have a bunch. So let's try to rapid fire these as best we can. It says, all right, Brown Burner. He says, can you and Dave recommend this was the topic, or this is what we just talked about, first time insulin user. So we already covered that. That's, hope you enjoyed it, man. Chelsea. And she's from Patreon. She says, question for the next show. Why would someone's face turn red after starting their first cycle of low-dose test in Deca? What do you do to alleviate it?
Could be blood pressure. Could be a histamine response, which is surprisingly common. And I think some people forget about that sometimes. Often water retention can be a histamine response rather than actual estrogen as well.
Yeah.
So there would be the main two. You can be sensitive to things like carrier oil and solvents and stuff like that. So all of them can have an impact. So, but yeah, I mean, my primaries would be check blood pressure, and if that's not an issue, then I'd look at a histamine response.
Okay, I would agree with all those things. It's if this is just the start of the cycle, it's probably not hematocrit. You know, high hemoglobin, thick blood will tend to make your complexion more red. You'll feel your heartbeat in your face when you're tying your shoes, but not at the beginning of a cycle, you know.
But it wouldn't come and go post-ejection either. That would be more of a permanent situation.
True. All right. Okay, another one from Patreon from Duck Dane. He says, great show. Question for the next episode. How have you ever heard of someone having seizures after coming off 2.5 grams too cold turkey? Just a question.
Yes, I have actually.
Have you really?
I don't know if it was true. And I can't remember his name. He was a strongman competitor. Scottish. And he'd won Scotland's Strongest Man quite a few times, actually. This is going back a few years, and he got the wrong side of the law, got sent to prison, went cold turkey, and he was telling me that he was having seizures. I'd never heard of it before. I've never heard of it since until this.
Weird.
So at the time, I just thought it was a little bit of colourful storytelling.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to do the man a disjustice. It's just because I'd never heard of it before. So I always try and look at things with an open mind. But I was like, right, you know, maybe not. But I was a bit sceptical, shall we say. But having someone else mentioned it now, maybe there's more to it than I thought.
Huh. Yeah, I haven't heard of it. So this is the first time I've heard of it, and now the second with the other story you have, you know. All right, Brett says, Scott, listening to today's show, meaning the last episode, about prescribed gear, wanted to share what add-ons were available for my TRT clinic. I was told that you have to talk to a doctor about that you don't have to talk to a doctor about these. You just add them on with your order when you re-up for test. I sent you that image, Dave, of the list. I thought it was a source list, to be completely frank, man.
Let me get it up.
We're talking like $500 something for, less than like 70 Anadrol or something like that.
Deca, Winstrol, Anavar, Nat 50s, Proviron.
They call them Nat 50s?
No, they don't call them Nat 50s. I miss Nat 50s. Nat 50s were great.
But would you take them if you had them today? You know, that's the other question.
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh, you would? Okay.
Not now.
Yeah, that's
but
what
if I was repeating my journey, yeah.
Yeah. All right. What's the highest concentration you've kept your GH at? I've been able to carefully mix it up to 60 units per ml, and I'm wondering if you've ever mixed it stronger than that. It's just easy to put 0.2 ml in at a time when it's at 30 IU per ml. I would rather have it diluted lower.
Yeah, I would rather have more volume of fluid. I find more volume of fluid makes it much easier to inject than low volume of fluid, because, well, fuck me, with low volume of fluid, you never know if you're getting it in or not. It's like, well, if I spill a bit, I've spilled half of my dose.
Yeah. Versus if it's like a half mil that you're putting in, you've got a really good, accurate dose.
I don't see any advantage to having it concentrated. Yeah, it's less volume, but it's a water-based injection anyway, so, I mean, I wouldn't really give a shit.
Yeah.
Odd that one to me.
Awesome show, as always. Could you guys do a segment on competition for the AR concerning SARMs as a topic and AAS as a topic when mixing them? So he's asking, like...
There is none.
Okay.
As far as I'm aware, anyway. I mean, someone may say, but as far as I'm aware, there is none. There is no competition. It's people seem to have this. When drugs enter the system, they connect with an androgen receptor. They travel into the cell nucleus.
Yeah.
They impart their signaling. They leave the nucleus. They leave the receptor. The receptor splits in two and causes two androgen receptors, and it enters back into the bloodstream. And it will carry on until it's converted to DHT, converted to estrogen, or dies. So it may go into another receptor afterwards, or it may get picked up by a transport protein and move to another part of the body. But this is a constantly melting pot of things going on. So there's not a competition for the AR. If there's an AR available, it connects to it. If there's not, it connects to something else, or it stays free floating until it finds one. But the body will increase the number of ARs to accommodate the level of gear that's circulating.
Yeah.
What does change is sort of downstream stresses and things like that. So you're not always going to get advantages with that extra AR production, but the body will create plenty of ARs to deal with the anabolics you're putting in.
All right. How about this one? Love to hear suggestions on best ways to transition from 750 test 400 Primo to 750 test 400 EQ, or should I keep the Mast in? Transitioning from a cut to a bulk, looking to build mass. Crack on with the great content.
I think you're overthinking this. Just stop one and start the other.
Yeah.
Personally. Maybe go a week with nothing in between if you're concerned, but I would just stop one and start the other. I'd be conscious, nothing to do with the question, but I'd be conscious of how long you've actually been on as well. If you've been on a standard time already, it might be better to just actually have a break before you push for your bulk. You're going to get some natural progress off the back of a rebound anyway, so you might find you get 3 or 4 weeks of decent growth without any anabolics in there whatsoever.
That's true.
And then drop your anabolics at a later date. But other than that, I'll say always. You can stop. There's no interaction issues, so you don't need to worry about anything like that. The only concern I would have would be the effect on estrogen, and mainly whether if you've still got active Primo and the EQ goes on top, whether we're going to see an oversuppression of estrogen. So that would be my only concern. But other than that, there isn't a real concern. You could, by all means, run the test and Mast that you're running, drop the Primo, leave it out for 2 weeks, then start the EQ if you were really concerned. But other than that,
it's
all you're going to get.
Mast. He's going to drop the Mast and start the EQ. So,
I thought it was test, Mast, and Primo, and he was dropping the Primo.
No Primo.
Oh, I apologize. Where have I got Primo from then?
I don't know. I said test P. I don't know. But I still agree with you. My only thought would be, so EQ, obviously the second you take it, guys, it is working. I understand that. But it will continue to build up, being a
Yes.
very long half-life. I don't like adding EQ in later in a cycle, because I do feel like it's doing its best work, 8 weeks in, and I want to be able to ride that for 16 weeks personally, and assuming that everything's good. Blood work looks all right, blood's not getting too thick, everything else is okay. It's not a compound I want to run shorter term. I mean, if I were doing something like this and I wanted to do something like, now I want to go to something more anabolic, I might drop the Mast and add in NPP, for instance, just because although it's not like radically fast, it's going to be faster than EQ, and you're going to get a more direct response so that it's built up within the first few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That'd just be my thought. All right, what else do we have here? Oh, so Brando the Mando. He says, I work for, this is regard to last week's show, I work for a clinic. We have access to Test Cyp or Anathate, Nandrolone decanoate, stanozolol, methylene.
I hate that word. I absolutely hate that word.
Oxymethylone and oxandrolone. You can also get a Test Cyp and Prop blend and a Test E and nandrolone blend. However, the clinics that will give you these are not looking out for your health and won't be around once the FDA/DEA clamps down on the industry. Generally, the legit clinics will give you a short course of 5 to 20 milligrams of oxandrolone or 25 to 100 of nandrolone for 6 to 12 weeks only if your labs are in check, and they won't prescribe the other orals.
Now, that is what I find interesting about that is the proposed clamp down. Is that something that the industry is actually genuinely expecting, or is that something that's hopeful?
It's interesting.
Really interesting to know whether there is rumors of things getting stricter and tighter.
Yeah, and he had one more note too. Generally, you can't go above 300 tests or the pharmacy will kick it back. So I'll tell you what, Dave. It's interesting because the climate is changing. You know, we've got the enhanced games that Victoria is affiliated with now. Companies like this, organizations like this, are trying to make it more mainstream. The idea of testosterone isn't looked at with the same stigma that it had been, at least in the U.S., years back. Like, all your favorite celebrities that are in good shape in their 30s and 40s, they're all on TRT. Like, we assume they're on TRT now, So I don't think it has the same stigma, and so maybe there is going to be a little bit more freedom. But I mean, they are taking testosterone itself. They're reducing its level of schedule, the schedule that it's on. So it's not going to be considered as bad of a compound as it used to be by
I
law
do
standards.
think there's a valid point there, though, that these clinics that are prescribing effectively cycles do need to have a bit of pressure on them to be a bit more responsible.
Yeah.
Because yes, there are people that are going to those clinics so they can take advantage of that situation because they know what they're doing, but there are also people who don't know what they're doing, who don't have particularly healthy lifestyles.
Yeah.
And are just using it because the clinic's happy to give it them because it's available and the clinic makes more money. Now, there's a risk element there.
Yeah.
Without doubt, there's definitely a risk element there. So I do agree that I think there is need for stricter legislation around what goes on in one way or another, but what that should be, I have no idea.
Does MENT have the same mental side effects as nandrolone and Tren? I will attest to this. I had no issues, Dave, when I ran MENT acetate, and I was in a contest prep, which back then in 2009, we didn't know what we know about it now, and it's crazy conversion to methyl estrogen, all that. But when I ran MENT E, and I used it with 600 tests and very little to no AI, I know my estrogen was way out of control. Then I had it was bad, man. I got real dark. I was lifting in a dark place, every workout, strongest I had ever been kind of feel, and I just had a cloud over me.
And that's every day, isn't it? That's not.
Did I have a cloud over me?
No, that's how you should feel. That's normal. How a human. That's my every day. I don't know what you're going on about.
You should feel dark and brooding and stuff. And when you go to lift, it's that's where you're getting all your frustration out.
Where do you think this level of grumpiness comes from?
Okay. Yeah, it's all adding up. It's making sense to me now.
Yeah, I mean, all right. There's definitely issues around the high estrogen conversion if it's not managed. I think out of the 3 nandrolones, it's probably mentally the most easily to tolerate.
I found Tren better, personally.
Did you?
Yeah.
Right. But I think, a lot of it is down to the individual. I mean, the amount of people I know that run ADHD meds and use and say that they feel good when they start putting nandrolones into the mix.
Yeah.
which you wouldn't expect. You'd think it'd be the opposite, but it's like, no, when I'm on Deca or Tren, I feel really good.
Somebody commented that, actually, from last week, because we were talking about, dopamine in 19 Nors.
But I think across the board, out of the three NOR 19s, I would have said the average would be that MENT is probably going to be the lower impact in the comparative to the other two. But there's going to be a high amount of individual tolerance. Deca, for me, didn't do jack shit from a point of view of, mental health stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't touch the sides, and I definitely used plenty of it. But I mean, I've got clients that can't handle 200-300 meg of the stuff. So there is a wide spectrum of reactions to the NOR 19s, and they're very difficult to predict in any way.
All right. Another guy got prescribed 250 test, 200 Deca, 50 Anavar through his TRT clinic. Okay. How about this one? What's the best injection frequency for Test Cyp, 200 milligrams per ml? I hear a lot of peeps say that daily or every 3 day or 2 times a week. My guess is you're trying to not shock the system with an E-bolus dose, thus not spiking E2, but also, he starts speculating from there. So, I mean, what do you think, Dave? He isn't telling us the dose he's using per week. Is this TRT?
I would generally just stick it to twice a week, which is every 3 days, effectively. I'm not a fan of daily. I don't think, unless you're super, super sensitive and having real issues, I don't see much advantage to daily.
I wouldn't remember.
What, daily?
Yeah, no, I'd forget.
I forget now.
Yeah.
I remember to do it today, which it should have been done yesterday. I completely forgot last week.
Yeah. I'll tell you, man. So back when I started podcasting, everybody said 2 times a week for a long-acting test, be it TRT or cycle. I found with acne that if I went to every other day with long-acting compounds, then it controlled my acne.
Yeah, I can see that.
Now, I didn't hear anybody else talking about long-acting tests every other day at that time. But today, man, it's the calm. It's the calm. Is that a word? No. It's the common thing.
Yeah, brah.
Yeah, brah. It's the calm.
Yeah.
No, everybody does it, though. Not everybody, but a lot of people do. They'll do like insulin pins every day. Like guys who are just doing TRT like to do that now.
Yeah, I don't think there's a great deal in it, personally. I think a lot of it's psychosomatic, but I do think there will be people that do find it easier. You've got to, I mean, maybe not so much with an insulin pen, but you've got to remember as well, every time you inject, there's an infection risk there.
Yeah, insulin pen, not quite as much, but yeah.
No, I get that,
said.
But at the same, and the other thing is when you're injecting every day, you do become, I mean, you've been there, I've been there, where you become extremely casual about your injection protocol.
Oh, yeah.
Extremely casual.
Like cooking food, making coffee, taking a little tap.
You may not quite adhere to the best hygiene protocols that you should do.
You can start getting lazy. Yeah.
Yeah, you can. And I do think that, every day can be a factor in that because it becomes so commonplace. You just start to forget that actually there is a risk here.
Yeah.
There is an infection risk.
You ever hear of people getting insomnia from their TRT?
Yeah. More from a sort of slight overthinking type setup.
Okay.
Obviously, a lot depends on dose, and very often I've found that when people do get insomnia from TRT, it's because they're trying to push it at the top end of stuff. And literally just pulling it back a little bit improves it. But you get an increased neuron activity with anabolics. And even TRT doses can increase neuron activity. You can't always regulate that well. And effectively, you overthink. So you go to bed and then your brain just does not shut off. GABA is very useful at helping with that, but obviously also just sort of fiddling about. People seem very reluctant to reduce doses.
Oh, yeah.
In anything. And I've seen it time and time again where people have been running top end of range but have a few issues, and when you get them to finally reduce the dose slightly, they still feel just as good, if not actually better, and don't have the issues anymore. So there is sweet spots, and sometimes that sweet spot can be lower than you are, not higher.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I definitely have seen people get insomnia on cycle, when you start really cranking the androgens. Scott, can you give us an update on your SLU? I've been taking 400 to 500 micrograms injectable per day. I don't seem to feel much from it 6 weeks in. So I told him, I was like, listen, I need to do another Ask Me Anything video. I'm behind on that. I need to get another one out, and I can go into more depth there. I just came off it, Dave. I'm taking a break. I feel like, I started it like February, and I ran that from February to June. And I felt like, I'm not seeing the same benefit I was. Now, I got sick when we took our trip. I told you that last week. Like after the trip, I came home, and we think it might have been influenza A. We both got it, and we're both dealing with like a bunch of brain fog after this, and the SLU wasn't clearing it. So I decided after all this time, I need to take a break. I talked to Keith from Parabolic, and he said, yeah, he's seen down regulation after a period of time. So I'm taking time off, and I don't normally suggest this compound to people. I had found in the past that cardarine, GW501516, did give me really good endurance. It helped my breathing, and it cut the brain fog. So I decided I'm going to run a low dose of cardarine at 10 milligrams. And I'd been holding on to this 5-amino 1-MQ, which also has a lot of great similar benefits. As it's a good fat burner too, from what I hear. So I'm testing that out now as well. That's going to be the game plan for the interim. And I'm finding, Dave, like instantly, man, I was struggling, dude, hard with mental focus.
I thought these were supposed to be fat burners.
Well, I found that...
You've not lost any weight.
Yeah, I'm down, man.
You look exactly the same as you did in February.
Oh, no, I don't. Believe me. I'm down. I was 217 in February with...
Well, you're now 214.
All the low back fat you could imagine. Like all the low back fat that you could possibly have, I had. And now I'm down to 187 to 190, depending on the day.
I have back fat.
Do you get a little back fat?
Yeah, I've got front fat, high fat, low fat, side fat.
Are you dealing with high fat and low fat? It's real common.
Head fat.
No, I was holding a lot of fat. Fattest I had been in a long time. But, dude, I wasn't consistently training and dieting properly for like 5 years. Just because I'd get into a good groove, and I'm not going to go into the whole story, but anyway, I'm happy to be back. This year has been my best year in a few years now, so doing cardio, and I can't train as hard again because I'm getting back into my groove after being sick, but I'm doing more like a cross training, which is kind of crazy, and I'm enjoying it, man. I had a great workout the last 2 days. All right, I'll go into detail on that later, guys. Dave doesn't want to hear all about it.
I definitely don't want to hear about CrossFit.
No, not CrossFit, cross training.
You said CrossFit.
I did
I'm
not.
sure you said you did.
I did not.
You're dead to me. You're dead to me, Scott. Dead to me.
No, I don't do CrossFit.
You do.
Okay. Contacted Eval a week or two ago, and guess who answered the phone? LOL.
What? Was he a grumpy, miserable shit? Because usually he is.
Quick bit of advice, and I have my test and phlebotomy scheduled next week. Thanks, Dave. And I said, did you get the man himself? And he said, yep. He said, yes, I did indeed. Recognize that dulcet tone. Was a short call and no time for him to yawn.
Yeah. I'm not the best at answering the phone.
No? Well, you did a good job that day.
I'm trying to get better. One is trying to improve oneself. But,
all right.
Yes.
I want to make sure I get this one in because he's a new commenter, new listener. He said, and then we'll get to Dave's advice of the week. He says, I think I asked in the wrong episode. Okay, so it says, thank you for this, Scott. The next question, let's see. best PED. Still talking about how awesome we are. Thank you. We appreciate it. I have a bet with my friend, and your answer will decide who wins, me or my friend. Let's
Is
say,
there money on it?
I don't know. Let's say 400 milligrams a test base cycle, adding in Tren E or ACE, 150 milligrams a week. Then the other cycle would be 400 milligrams of test base with 500 EQ or 600 Deca. Which one is better to make more strength gains? My pick is Tren, and my friend says the latter. Dave, what is better? Thanks for answering and for your knowledge. 150 Tren E or Tren ACE versus 500 EQ or 600 Deca.
600 Deca.
Yeah.
Yeah. The dosing's way too over the dose. You're 4 times the dose.
Yeah.
You know, it just. I mean, Tren is a powerful drug. Don't get me wrong. It is, and it is a good strength drug. But you're talking 4 times, and you're talking. I mean, 4 times against another nandrolone as well, which is also proven to be very effective at strength gains. No, yeah, no, definitely the Deca for me.
I'm 100% with you, man. It's just that the dose is too far off, you know?
Yeah.
We had...
yeah, I mean, if you were saying comparable dosing, then yeah, I would have said the Tren. But when you're 4 times the dose with the Deca, no, definitely the Deca.
We had somebody say, mega vote for Dave to bring out his show and tell box on the show, and then 20 people liked it. So...
next week, remind me.
All right.
I don't even know where it is. Mama, do you know where my show and tell box is? My drug box. Don't need it now, just curious. Oh, actually, it might be at Anne's reach. It's down the back of the desk, is it?
Okay.
Right, okay.
Okay. Well, we'll do that next week for you guys.
Yeah, you can have it next week.
All right. All right.
There's some good ones in there.
One last thing, guy said, is Reta anabolic 6 weeks post-show off all PEDs, using Reta to control the rebound. Body composition remain unchanged after the normal 12 to 15 post-show weight gain. Feeling great, training is great, and I'm stronger. Minimal fat gain and remaining very vascular. I was expecting to be a smaller, softer composition after dropping all the PEDs, Test, Mast, and Winnie. I just think it's the rebound. Reta is not anabolic, but it will help to keep your insulin sensitivity up. So, you know, I have a feeling he's just riding that wave, and the Reta's, if nothing else, helping him to stay insulin sensitive. So it will all end eventually.
It might also be helping him not to binge as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because obviously post-show, there's a big urge to eat.
Yeah. All right. Dave, the most important part of the day.
Got somebody bringing me coffee?
We ask you for your worldly advice. From all the things, all the...
Do you know how stressful this is to have to try and come up with some bullshit every week?
I mean, you have said keep swimming a number of times. And that one, it's to ingrain it into our heads, right?
Yeah, and it's good. I mean...
It is good. It is, and it's important, Dave. It's important you keep swimming.
Consistency to any project, plan, ambition, goal... is what will get you there. You know, we're bombarded with, going off that, and this is probably going to end up coming a bit the days of vibe, but we're bombarded with, you know, get quick fix schemes on social media and you know, things like OnlyFans and stuff like that, where people with no talent and very little self-respect.
Like this podcast.
You like this podcast, yeah? Well, we don't really make any money on this, do we? So it's not.
I break
really
even
for us.
I break even because I only have to put in 50 hours a week. You know what I'm saying? And then I break even to keep living and, you know, at least get the bills paid. Are you playing the smallest violin in the world for me?
I am. Yes.
Yeah.
But you know, true success is going to come from consistency. And doing small things, but doing them continuously.
Yeah.
And it can be all sorts. I mean, we're doing some stuff at the moment. We're developing a training company which has required us to get some more qualifications. And it's just been a case of just, you know, when I get a spare hour or a spare 45 minutes, I'll do a little bit of work on the qualification. And I've done the assessment side of it for the theory side. I passed all that. I'm now onto the practical side assessments. and I'm starting to work through them. Now, when I first looked at that course, I very much felt overwhelmed, very much felt, how the hell am I going to get through this? When am I going to find the time to do it? And yeah, I haven't got through it as quick as I'd like, but I'm getting through it. And it's that consistency. It's that just doing a little step towards your goal every day or every week, and continually doing that's going to get you where you want to be. It may take time, but if you keep at it, you will get there. Enough work will always get you success.
I think that's good advice. I think that is.
And it never changes, but you've got to commit to doing the work, and that's where I think a lot of people fall down, because the world tells them through social media that they should be rich because the video's gone viral. They should be rich because of this or that and make money quick and easy.
Yeah.
And the truth is, even, everybody who's been successful has got there initially through hard work. Once you are successful, it's much easier to make money with much less effort.
Yeah.
But that initial success is just down to hard work, and consistently hard work. But a couple of hours a week on a project that's going to move you forward, be it future learning or gaining better skills or developing a little side business, it will all come in time.
And including your bodybuilding too. Like, you don't need to do everything right all the time. Like, you just take off a little bit at a time, bite off what you can chew, and stay consistent, like you said. And that's literally how you make gains. Dave, I've seen so many people over the years. You and I both coach, and I don't know about you, but that's a big part of my day is working with these guys and gals. I've seen so many people that make really good progress over the course of, say, 12 weeks. Then they fall off. It's maybe the holidays are coming and they say, I'll hit you back up in, January. I don't hear from them until June or June of the following, 2 years down the road. And guess what? They stopped. They lost all the progress they made, and they're in a constant game of, making that first 12 weeks of progress and then losing it. Then making that first 12 weeks. You got to just continue on and hold it no matter. And that's what I told myself, Dave, when I decided, like, man, I want to start competing. I was consistent for like 2-3 years of never missing a meal at that point. Like, it was something that I had already been very plugged into, and it's the only way that you can continue to build off of your progress is to not let it go,
The other thing as well is that people will go at things too hard. They go at things too strongly.
Yeah.
And they can't sustain it. And then it becomes a burden and it falls away and it ends up stopping. I mean, we've all had clients, you've had them, I've had them. They'll be brand new Monday to Friday, then every weekend they fall off the wagon and they become a mess because they're trying to go too hard during the week. Where if they just calm down a little bit,
did what they could, get
a little bit more balance, then they're not going to be train wrecking themselves every weekend. But we do this as well with careers and relationships and all sorts of shit, where it's just like, create consistency, create a habit that you can sustain, and then build from that. And then once that habit is built in and you're doing it automatically, it might be something like, every night I'm reading 15-20 minutes of a book that's going to educate me on whatever subject, or I'm doing something else that's better for me. Once that becomes the norm, then you can add a second one and then a third one, and you build on it, and slowly you develop your attitude and your lifestyle into a more productive and more progressive individual. And as a result, you will eventually get the rewards.
Look at this YouTube channel. I mean, we did audio podcasts long before we did YouTube, and when we started YouTube on the other channel, dude, we got like 200 views per episode. Like, and I thought that was good, We got 200 views for like years, right? Like, we weren't focused on YouTube, but we just kept staying consistent and put the show out and look at it now, man. Now we
it's still shit. Yeah.
It's still crap.
It's not got any better.
There are more people watching it,
This crap, yeah.
There's more people watching it. It's great way of putting it. Don't insult our listeners. Is that insulting our listeners, Dave? If they're watching us?
I don't know. It depends what other crap's out there. I suppose we might be the better of a bad bunch. I don't know.
The bar's low. Yeah.
But no, it is. You just need to. I think we overreach very often, and sometimes we just overface ourselves when it's little steps, but done well and consistently.
And I appreciate the level,
Yeah.
Dave. You told me, you said there's like a lot of pressure in you having this different insight every week. I appreciate the pressure that you must be under with all these people that want to hear what you have to say and give them advice. It's real rough.
All three of them.
Hey, my mom tunes in for your advice every week, Dave. That's what she's here for. And two other friends.
Beat your child harder.
Guys, we appreciate you tuning in. Thanks for watching another episode of the Drugs and Stuff podcast. And go to 2evalbloodanalysis.com. Get your labs done by Dave. And Dave might even answer the phone if you need to call. But really, you can set everything you need up online at the website. And, of course, Strom Sports Nutrition, both in the U.S. and in the U.K., stromsports.com. Go to supplementsource.ca for Canadians, great deals that change week to week. And, of course, truenutrition.com. Use our code THINK and now get 10% off on all your orders. And, thank you to everybody from Patreon. Thanks for leaving those questions. Leave more questions for the next episode on Patreon, and we will knock them out because that's what we do. For another episode of the podcast, we'll see you soon. Thanks, Dave.